I never thought my perfect life could shatter so completely in a single evening. My husband, my home, my entire world. I thought I knew it all. But that night, everything I believed in came crashing down, piece by piece. And it started with a phone. I had always trusted James. Married for 8 years, we shared what I thought was an unbreakable bond. He was charming, attentive, the kind of man who could make a woman feel like she was the only person in the world. I admit, I may have been naive, but I never imagined him capable of betrayal. It all began with a subtle change. He started coming home later, claiming work deadlines or late meetings. I told myself not to worry. I wanted to be a good wife, not a suspicious one. But the truth has a way of revealing itself when you least expect it. That evening, I was sitting in the living room, sipping my tea, scrolling through social media. The house was unusually quiet. I noticed his car pull into the driveway, and yet, when I called out, there was no answer. Curiosity gnawed at me. James had always been predictable. Something felt .off. I walked toward the bedroom, expecting to find him asleep or scrolling through his phone. But instead, the room was empty. And then I noticed it, a small, red phone sitting on the bedside table. I didn't recognize it. "James?" I called out, my voice trembling slightly. No response. I picked it up. There was no password, just an open chat screen. My heart raced as I scrolled through messages that made my blood run cold. Names, dates, flirty texts, secret plans. And the one that caught my eye. A message from someone called Lily. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Don't let her know." I froze. My hands shook. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room, to wake him and demand an explanation. But a part of me, call it instinct, told me to keep reading. Then I heard a noise downstairs. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. I panicked, shoved the phone back under the pillow, and ran to the living room, pretending I hadn't seen anything. But James' parents were there, visiting unexpectedly. They didn't know I had discovered the phone. They greeted me warmly, completely unaware that the foundation of our marriage was crumbling in my hands. James walked in moments later, cheerful and oblivious, and my stomach twisted at the thought of his lies. We had dinner together, laughing, talking about trivial things, all while I sat there, pretending, my mind racing. Every glance at James reminded me of the betrayal hidden in his pocket, or worse, in plain sight on that red phone. After dinner, his mother leaned over, lowering her voice. "Sweetheart, James seems distant these days. Is everything okay between you two?" I forced a smile, my chest tightening. "Yes, everything's fine. Just a bit of work stress, you know." But the question lingered in the air, and so did the truth I couldn't yet voice. I realized in that moment how precarious my life had become. One wrong move, one discovery too soon, and the illusion of happiness could shatter completely. Later, after his parents went to bed, I found myself unable to sleep. James was in the shower, humming, completely unaware that I knew about Lily. I felt a mix of fear, anger, and heartbreak. How could he? How could the man I trusted so completely betray me like this? I tiptoed back to the bedroom. The red phone was still there, mocking me. I picked it up again, unable to resist. And that's when I noticed something even worse. There were photos. Pictures of James and Lily. In our house. In our bedroom. My bedroom. My heart stopped. I dropped the phone in shock, my mind reeling. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was physical, intimate. And it had been happening right under my nose, right under my roof. The next day, I confronted James, or at least I tried. I asked him casually about work, about his late nights, about everything. He smiled, kissed my cheek, and lied. Every answer was a lie, and I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that I was living with a stranger in the body of the man I loved. But the worst part, I wasn't alone in this discovery. That night, as I was standing there, frozen, James' parents had come downstairs for a glass of water. And without realizing it, they had seen the phone, seen the messages, seen the evidence of betrayal. I could feel it in the way they looked at me. Not shocked, not surprised, but quietly horrified. Their silence was heavier than words. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. The walls of my perfect life were collapsing, and everyone was going to see it. I wanted to scream, to run, to demand answers, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. The red phone had revealed everything, and now with his parents as witnesses, the humiliation, the heartbreak, the anger, it was no longer mine alone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching a pillow, imagining every possible scenario. Confrontation, revenge. Walking away. Staying. Each option felt both terrifying and inevitable. And then, just as I was drifting into a restless sleep, I heard James' voice in the hallway, soft, almost tender. Can we talk? I froze. My heart pounded. Could I face him? Could I survive the truth he was about to reveal or deny? And then I realized I wasn't ready. Not yet. Because what I didn't know, what I couldn't have guessed, was that the red phone was only the beginning. The secrets James had been hiding were far deeper than I could imagine. And the moment his parents saw everything, nothing would ever be the same. I never imagined the betrayal would go beyond the phone. But when I saw the look on his parents' faces, I knew the worst was yet to come. The morning after that night felt like walking through a fog. James was acting normal, cheerful even, as if nothing had happened. He kissed me goodbye before leaving for work, completely unaware that I, and now his parents, knew everything. I could barely look at him without remembering the messages, the photos, the red phone that had turned my world upside down. I tried to act normal during breakfast with his parents, but the tension was suffocating. His mother, Diane, kept stealing glances at me, her lips pressed tight, while his father, Robert, stared into his coffee cup like he was trying to swallow the bitter truth whole. I wanted to scream, to accuse James right there in front of them, but a part of me was still in shock. Are you feeling all right, sweetheart? Diane finally asked, her voice soft but edged with worry. I forced a smile. I'm fine, just a bit tired. She nodded slowly, but I could see it in her eyes. She knew something was wrong, and I knew I couldn't hold it in much longer. The burden of knowing, and of keeping it a secret, was eating me alive. As soon as they left, I found myself alone with James. The house felt heavier, almost suffocating. I wanted answers. I needed them. But as I looked at him, at the man I had loved for so many years, all I could see was the stranger who had been sneaking around behind my back. James. I started, my voice trembling. I need to know something. He looked up from his laptop, smiling casually. What's up? I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. Are you seeing someone else? His smile faltered for a fraction of a second, just enough for me to notice. But then he laughed lightly. What? No, of course not. Why would you even ask that? I felt a surge of anger mixed with despair. He was lying. I knew it. The red phone, the messages, the photos, they didn't lie. But how could I make him admit it? How could I confront the man who had betrayed me without breaking myself in the process? I found a phone last night, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. A red phone. Messages, photos, evidence. You can't deny it. His eyes widened for a fraction of a second, and then he forced a smile. I don't know what you're talking about. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone at him, to demand an explanation, to tear down every lie he had built around us. But something stopped me. His parents. They had seen it too. And I couldn't let this become a scandal, a battle, a spectacle. Not yet. Instead, I left the room, my hands shaking. I needed to think. I needed a plan. And most of all, I needed to protect myself. For the next few days, I watched him like a hawk. Every message he received, every phone call, every step he took, I observed. I discovered small lies he told about work, small deviations from his routine, small signs that confirmed my worst fears. And yet, he continued to act as if everything was normal. Then came the first confrontation I couldn't avoid. I was in the kitchen when Diane came to me, her voice low. I saw it too, she said, her eyes brimming with sadness. The phone. The messages. I don't know how to say this, but James has been cheating. And it's not just a fling. It's serious. I felt my knees go weak. I wanted to cry, to scream, to collapse. But I held it in, nodding silently. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice trembling. I didn't know how, she admitted. And I didn't want to make things worse. But now, you need to protect yourself. You need to know the full truth before it's too late. Her words sent chills down my spine. The full truth. What could possibly be worse than what I had already seen? That night, I waited for James to fall asleep before I took the red phone again. This time, I dug deeper, scrolling through hidden messages, secret emails, and even deleted conversations. Each message was worse than the last. Lily wasn't just someone he was seeing on the side. She was a full-blown affair, someone he was planning a future with. The more I read, the more my heart broke. The messages spoke of meetings, weekends away, even gifts he had bought her, gifts I had assumed were for me. And every word was dripping with intimacy, with a passion he hadn't shown me in years. And then I saw it. The thing that made my stomach drop and my hands freeze. A message from Lily, sent just yesterday. Can't wait to see you tonight. I miss you. Are you sure your wife won't suspect anything? My blood ran cold. He had been seeing her while I was right under his nose. And worse, it was happening tonight. Tonight, in our house. I realized with horror that the red phone had not only revealed his betrayal, it had given me a chance to stop it. But I didn't know how. Should I confront him now, before it was too late? Or should I wait, gather evidence, and make him pay for every lie, every betrayal, every stolen moment of my life? The decision weighed heavily on me. And just as I was trying to formulate a plan, I heard a sound upstairs, the soft click of a bedroom door, followed by whispered voices. It was him, and it was Lily. I crept toward the staircase, heart pounding, every nerve on fire. I could hear snippets of their conversation, her laughter, his whispers of promises and lies. My vision blurred with rage and pain. And then, just as I was about to step closer, something even worse happened. James' parents appeared at the top of the stairs. Diane's hand flew to her mouth. Robert's eyes widened in shock. They had heard everything. They were witnessing the betrayal firsthand. I froze, torn between stepping in and letting them handle it. But before I could move, James turned, saw me, saw them, and his face went pale. The moment stretched, silent and terrifying, as all the secrets, all the lies, hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. James' lips parted, as if to explain or to lie. But before he could, Lily's laugh rang out, and I realized this was far from over. The house felt like it had turned upside down. One moment, everything seemed normal. The next, the walls were closing in, and the air was thick with tension and betrayal. James' face was pale, Lily's expression froze into one of awkward surprise, and his parents were standing there, stunned, as if they had walked into a nightmare they couldn't wake from. I wanted to scream, to yell, to rip the truth out of him myself, but I couldn't. I had to process it, watch it unfold. I had to see the man I married for who he really was. Lily's eyes darted to me, then to Diane and Robert. I didn't know anyone was here, she stammered, her voice trembling slightly. But I could hear the smugness hiding behind the fear. She thought she had won. James opened his mouth, but no words came out at first. The calm, charming man I had loved for 8 years was gone. In his place was a man caught red-handed, trying to find a way out of the mess he had created. James, I said, my voice sharp but controlled. Explain this. He swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. It's not what you think. I laughed bitterly. Not what I think? Really? Because it looks like you've been cheating on me for months. Right in our house. While I trusted you completely. Diane stepped forward, her voice trembling with anger. How could you do this, James? In our home? To your wife? To us? Robert's hand shook slightly as he gripped the banister. We raised you to be better than this. I don't even recognize you right now. James' eyes flicked to Lily, then back to me, as if he were trying to decide who to protect. And then, finally, the words came out, desperate and weak. I love her, he admitted. My stomach turned. My hands trembled. I wanted to hit him, to slap him, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. Love her? I repeated, voice breaking. Love her? We've been married for 8 years. 8 years, James. And you, behind my back, you love her? Lily stepped closer, as if that somehow gave her permission to be there. I didn't mean to cause trouble, she said softly, but her eyes were full of triumph. She had won this round. I felt my chest tighten. Every betrayal, every lie, every stolen smile and whispered promise of love, they all came crashing down on me at once. And then I remembered the red phone, the proof of every single word, every message, every photo, every meeting she had planned. I had it all. I could see the fear in James' eyes now. He knew he had no escape. Not with me. Not with his parents. Not with the evidence in my hands. Do you even hear yourself? I shouted, stepping closer. You've destroyed everything. Our marriage, our trust, our home. And you think saying you love her excuses it? He shook his head, helpless. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I don't know why, but I didn't need to hear more. I already knew the answers. He had wanted her. He had sought her. And he had done it while pretending to love me. Diane's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. I can't believe this, my son. How could you? Robert's voice was low, dangerous, a quiet thunder that made me shiver. You need to fix this, James. You need to tell me you're going to end it, that you're going to make this right. Or, I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. James' shoulders slumped. He looked at me, then at Lily, then at his parents, and finally at the floor. I don't know what to do. I. I'm so sorry. I wanted more than an apology. I wanted justice. I wanted him to feel the betrayal, the humiliation, the heartbreak he had caused me. And I realized in that moment that I couldn't just stay silent. I had to take control. I picked up the red phone from the bed. Every message, every photo, every plan he had made with Lily, every bit of evidence was in my hands. This, I said, holding it up, is proof, and it's not going away. I have everything you've been hiding. Every lie, every secret, every betrayal. Lily's face paled. You can't. Oh, but I can, I interrupted, my voice icy. And I will. Don't think for a second that you can just smile and charm your way out of this. You've crossed a line you can't come back from. James looked at me, panic and guilt mingling in his eyes. Please, let's talk about this privately. We can work it out. I laughed, but it was hollow. Work it out. James, you've been planning weekends with her while I cooked your dinners. You've lied about your every move, your every thought, your every intention. There's nothing to work out. You've shown me exactly who you are. Diane stepped forward, trembling but firm. You need to leave Lily. Now. This house is not yours. And James, you need to figure out what kind of man you really are. Lily hesitated, then turned, shooting one last glance at James as if daring him to follow. He didn't. She left, and the sound of the door closing felt like a final punctuation mark on the nightmare. James sank into the sofa, head in his hands, and I stood there, furious, devastated, but also strangely empowered. For the first time, I realized that the truth, painful as it was, had given me power. The power to confront, to decide, to take control of the life I had almost lost. His parents left shortly after, their faces full of disappointment and grief. Diane hugged me tightly, whispering, "You deserve better. Don't ever forget that." Robert gave James a look that could freeze fire, then left, leaving him alone with me. I didn't speak for a long moment, letting the silence stretch between us. Finally, I said, "You need to leave. I don't want to see you tonight. I don't even want to be in the same room with you right now. And when you do come back, we need to talk, but on my terms." James nodded silently, still overwhelmed, still guilty. I could see the realization in his eyes. He had lost control. For once, I held the power. But even as I felt a small sense of triumph, a dark shadow of uncertainty settled over me. I had confronted him. I had exposed him. But what about the things I didn't yet know? The other lies he had told, the other secrets he had kept buried deep. How far had this betrayal truly gone? And then, late that night, as I tried to sleep, I noticed something on the phone. A single message I hadn't seen before, hidden deep in a folder he thought I would never find. She suspects nothing. Keep her in the dark. I'll handle everything. My heart froze. James hadn't just betrayed me. He had planned, and the thought that this nightmare might not yet be over made my blood run cold. I realized, with a sickening certainty, that James' betrayal went deeper than I could imagine, and whatever he had planned next, I wasn't ready for it. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of dread I couldn't shake. James had left the house early, leaving behind only the faint scent of his cologne and the echo of the previous night's confrontation. The red phone sat on the bedside table, a constant reminder that my life had been invaded, manipulated, and betrayed. I knew I had to be careful. He was dangerous in his lies, skilled in deception, and now I understood that he had planned every step with calculated precision. I spent the morning thinking, trying to map out everything I knew and everything I didn't. James had been unfaithful for months, yet some part of me feared there were still secrets hidden, even deeper than Lily. And then it hit me. If he had been planning, hiding, manipulating, there had to be more. More lies, more betrayal, and perhaps more people involved. By mid-afternoon, I decided to confront him, but not in anger. Not yet. I needed answers, and I needed them in a way that would make him accountable. I texted him, asking him to meet me in the living room when he returned. I didn't tell him what I had planned. I wanted him to feel the weight of his actions without having an escape. When he came home, he tried to act casual, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. His eyes darted to the red phone, which I held loosely in my hand. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. "Sit down." He obeyed, and for the first time, I noticed the fear creeping into his expression. The charming, confident man who had betrayed me was gone. In his place was someone small, someone cornered. I started slowly, methodically. James, I want you to tell me everything. No lies. No excuses. No hiding behind excuses or work stress or whatever you've been saying to yourself. Everything about Lily. Everything you've been doing. I want to know. He hesitated, swallowing hard. I don't know if I can. It's complicated. Complicated? I repeated sharply. You made it complicated. You chose to betray me. You chose to lie, cheat, manipulate. Don't make it more complicated by pretending it's not your fault. He flinched. The truth was starting to crack through the walls he had built. It started as just a mistake, he said quietly. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't think you'd find out. I shook my head, anger boiling over. A mistake? A mistake is forgetting your keys. A mistake is missing a meeting. You planned this. You orchestrated it. You lied to my face for months, James. You didn't just make a mistake. You built a life of lies on top of ours. He hung his head, silent. I realized that despite his words, despite his apologies, I couldn't take him back. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. And yet, I still wanted to understand the full extent of his betrayal. Where did it go? I asked softly. How far did you take this? His eyes met mine briefly, filled with guilt. I never slept with her here. Not physically. But everything else. Everything else happened in this house. Your bedroom. Our home. I thought I could get away with it. My blood ran cold. My home, my sanctuary, had been violated. And the fact that he admitted it so casually, without shame, made me realize how little he respected me, our marriage, or the life we had built together. Then came the moment I had been dreading. And the plan you mentioned in the message? I asked, holding up the red phone. The one where you said you'd handle everything? James swallowed hard, eyes wide. I thought I could manage it. Keep her quiet. Make sure no one knew. It was supposed to be temporary. I wasn't thinking straight. Temporary? I repeated, my voice trembling with fury. James, you call betraying me, manipulating me, hiding her in our house temporary? I could see the panic rising now. He knew I had discovered every secret, every lie. He knew I held the power to destroy him completely. And yet, even as I realized the extent of his betrayal, I felt something else. A surge of determination, a cold clarity. I wasn't going to break. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to take control. You think this ends with an apology? I asked quietly. You think saying sorry erases the months of lies, the betrayal, the humiliation? You think it erases the fact that your parents saw it all? That everyone knows what kind of man you really are? He shook his head, swallowing hard. I don't know what to do. Please, let's just fix this. I laughed, bitter and hollow. Fix this? No, James. You need to understand something. I will decide how this ends. And it won't be on your terms. You've had months to manipulate, deceive, and lie. Now it's my turn. Now I'm in control. I could see the fear in his eyes, the realization that he had lost everything he thought he had. And I knew that from this moment on, nothing would be the same. Not our home, not our marriage, not our lives. But even as I felt a sense of control, a dark part of me knew the fight wasn't over. James had planned. He had manipulated. And there were still pieces of the puzzle I hadn't uncovered. Secrets hidden, truths buried. And I realized with a cold, sinking certainty that the next steps I took had to be calculated, precise, and unflinching. That night, I made a decision. I would not let him manipulate me anymore. I would not let him control the narrative. I would gather every piece of evidence, every lie, every secret, and expose it all. Not just to him, but to everyone who mattered. I opened the red phone one last time, scrolling through messages, photos, and hidden conversations. Each message was a dagger, each photo a reminder of the life he had stolen from me. And then I found something that made my stomach turn, a plan he had been working on, a way to keep Lily in our lives, even now. It was clear. He wasn't done. The betrayal wasn't over. And if I didn't act fast, he would manipulate, deceive, and destroy even more of my life. I clenched my fists, my heart pounding. Revenge wasn't just an option. It was inevitable. And I knew with every fiber of my being that the next move I made would change everything. I realized the full extent of James' plan, and that night, as he slept unaware, I made a decision that would turn the tables in ways he could never imagine. That night, I stayed awake, watching James sleep, the red phone in my hands like a loaded weapon. Every text, every secret, every lie he had ever sent to Lily was proof of his betrayal. And now, with all the pieces in my hands, I realized I had something more powerful than anger. I had control. I knew I had to act carefully. Revenge wasn't about chaos. It was about precision. I couldn't risk him manipulating the situation again, lying, charming his way out. No, this had to be final. The next morning, I started putting my plan into motion. I called Diane and Robert, explaining that I needed them on my side, that James' manipulations had gone too far, and that they had seen the evidence firsthand. They didn't hesitate. Their disappointment in him was palpable, their support unwavering. Together, we became a silent army against the man who had thought he could betray me with impunity. I invited James to the living room under the guise of reconciliation. When he arrived, he tried his usual charm, smiling nervously. "Can we talk?" he asked, eyes darting to the red phone sitting openly on the table. "Yes," I said calmly. "We're talking. And this time, there's no lying." I started slowly, letting him feel the weight of what he had done. I showed him every message, every photo, every plan he had made with Lily. I watched as his confident facade crumbled, his lips trembling, his eyes wide with fear. "Do you see now?" I asked quietly. "This isn't a mistake, James. This is months of planning, manipulation, and betrayal. And it ends today." He tried to interrupt, tried to justify, but I held up a hand. "No. You listen. You understand what you've lost. Not just me, but your family, your reputation, your dignity. And now, you will understand consequences." Then came the part he hadn't anticipated. I contacted Lily, not to beg, not to threaten, but to expose. I sent her copies of every text and photo, letting her see that James was not just cheating, but manipulating both of us. Within minutes, her confidence crumbled. The woman who thought she was untouchable was suddenly faced with the reality of the life James had promised her, and how easily it could collapse. By the time she realized what was happening, James was panicking. "Stop! Don't!" he shouted. But it was too late. He was trapped in the web he had spun, and for the first time, he experienced the fear, the vulnerability, and the helplessness he had forced me to feel. I then turned my attention to him. "You need to leave. And I mean leave this house, this marriage, this life you've ruined. You can try to salvage your pride elsewhere, but not here. Not anymore." James tried to plead, tried to promise change, but I had heard it all before. I shook my head. "No. There are no second chances. You've had your fun. Now it's my turn to protect myself and anyone else you try to manipulate." He looked at me, finally realizing the gravity of his mistakes. I love you," he whispered, desperation creeping into his voice. "I never wanted to hurt you." I felt a pang of sorrow, not for him, but for the man he could have been. "Love isn't supposed to hurt like this," I said firmly. "You've destroyed the foundation of what we had, and there's no repairing that." With Diane and Robert as witnesses, he packed his things in silence, shame replacing arrogance. He avoided my gaze, his charm extinguished, replaced by the reality of consequences. When the door closed behind him, it felt like a door closing on the past, on lies, and on the betrayal that had nearly consumed me. But the story wasn't just about James. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my power. I spent the following days removing reminders of him, securing my home, and rebuilding my sense of self. Every action was a declaration. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor, and anyone who thought they could betray me would learn the cost of crossing me. Then, I took a final step, one that would ensure James' actions could never hurt anyone else again. I gathered all the evidence, the messages, the photos, the plans, and sent copies to trusted friends and colleagues who needed to know, making sure that he couldn't hide behind lies or charm. The man who thought he could play games had been exposed completely, and the consequences were irreversible. And finally, I confronted the hardest truth, that love sometimes comes with betrayal, that trust can be shattered, and that the people closest to you can hurt you the most. But I also realized that strength comes from survival, from reclaiming your narrative, and from refusing to let anyone else control your life. I remember sitting in my empty living room that night, the red phone now silent on the table. The house felt lighter, cleaner, freer, and for the first time in months, I felt a strange peace. I had faced the storm, survived it, and come out stronger on the other side. James was gone. Lily was out of our lives. His parents, though disappointed, were by my side supporting me. And I was free, not just from the betrayal, but from the fear and the manipulation that had once held me captive. I knew there would be scars, reminders of what had happened. But scars are also proof of survival, of endurance, of resilience. And as I finally put the red phone away, I whispered to myself, no one can betray me and get away with it. Not now. Not ever again. Because sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another, a story where you are the hero, not the victim. James had destroyed everything, yet in the ruins of betrayal, I found a strength I never knew I had, and a resolve that no one would ever break again.